This is the E-commerce Braintrust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our Braintrust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Hello and welcome to the E-commerce Braintrust podcast. I'm Julie Spear, head of retail marketplace services at Acadia, alongside my co-host, Jordan Ripley, director of retail operations. And this episode is the second in a two-part series that is aimed at giving you all the information that you need to be ready for Prime Day. Our first episode covered all of the operational, promotional, and organic tactics that you should be thinking about in the lead up to the big days. I recommend going back and giving those a listen if you didn't get to catch them prior to this. But today, we're going to dive into media strategy with our very own senior retail media manager, Damiano. He has been managing Prime Day ad strategies for brands for the past several years. And prior to that, he was managing ads for brands directly during his time at Amazon. So, Damiano, you're battle-hardened, you're a Prime Day veteran, and we're excited to get your take on what makes this year's Prime Day feel different, special, unique to prior years. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
We are recording this episode. It's the very end of April. And of course, we're expecting Prime Day midsummer, likely mid-July. Knowing that there's already some uncertainty on the actual Prime Day dates, what are some of the key milestones ahead of the event that brands should be paying attention to right now? I kind of want to know what the conversations you're having and the questions you're fielding from your client partners right now and what you anticipate digging into over the next few weeks.
Yeah, well, the first thing is that Prime Day conversations have already begun, which is something, it might seem very early, but I think in the state of things, it's a really good moment to start having these conversations and just trying to start prepping for what will be a quite new style of Prime Day. We were going to have a 4-day Prime Day this year, which has never happened before. We've had multiple day events with long periods of promotions and things like that. But a 4-day summer Prime Day is certainly a first. So a lot of questions around that, around how we're going to manage things. But essentially, the preparation has just started to begin. And what we're mainly talking with our brands is just getting them prepared. What are their deliverables? What do they need to prepare for us, their agency partner? And what do we need to provide for them to make sure that this is going to be the most successful Prime Day possible? And yeah, when we dive into those more specifically on the brand side, it's the regular things. We really just want to make sure that we have the correct creatives. If we want to run creative through ads for Prime Day, what creatives do we want to get? If we want to have any Prime Day specific creatives that call out the event within the creative, there's some special, unique specifications that need to be adhered to. So also that, just making sure that the client and their creative team or our creative team are all aware and get that prepared for. And then other usual things like what ASINs are going to be on promo. Do we have any rough margins that the client can share with us? Because, yeah, this Prime Day is going to probably be, we're going to hear the word profitability probably a lot. So, yeah, we want to make sure that we're best prepared to achieve the client's goals. And then from the media perspective, from our deliverables, we just want to make sure that we have a very solid lead-in strategy, that we're collecting all of the historic data that goes with the event itself, any peak selling times, past keywords that were working, profitability thresholds of past products that we ran previously. We want to make sure that we're submitting our assets nice and early so they're ready and locked in way before the event, possibly even testing them a good couple of weeks before, just to kind of familiarize the customer with the creative that then they're going to see on Prime Day. Ad hoc campaign creation, and then budgeting, which is probably the larger portion of the whole preparation. Again, it's going to be a very exciting Prime Day with 4 days, but budgeting is going to be extremely, extremely important.
And that leads to the next thing, which a lot of those I think they're critically important, but you could have said them about Prime Days in the past of like, you'll need your assets and a budget in place. I have to understand my profitability. I think whereas prior years have felt sort of iterative, like maybe we have some new merchandising types or new promotions, or we have some different bells and whistles that Amazon rolled out. This one feels like a departure from years past and this switch from a roughly 2-day event to what we now know to be a 4-day event. So I'm curious. I mean, we have some corollaries. Like we've seen holiday shopping expand from Black Friday, Cyber Monday to a T12, T Infinity a span of time. But I'm curious for a couple of things. I mean, one, as you said, you've started talking to brands, so you have an understanding of what their initial reaction is to this 4-day event. I'm curious to learn a little bit about what this test looks like. The second thing, too, is just how have we adjusted our strategy to now accommodate those 2 extra days?
Yeah, so the way we're trying to adjust our strategy is we're trying to use the, let's say, adage of past success can hopefully tell us what the future is going to hold, in the sense that we're trying to look as much as we can to any past event that has had 4 days or a prolonged promotional period to try and tell us how this event is going to play out. Now, it's going to be very different. It's going to be, like I mentioned before, in the summer Prime Day event, having 4 days, the keyword here is not 4 days. The keyword is summer. We've never had 4 days of promotions during summer. We've had 4-day promotions during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, typically from the Friday to the Monday. And yeah, typically that works very well, but it's different because we have a different seasonal moment for these brands. We also believe that the consumers are going to act slightly differently than in the summer lull. That's kind of why Prime Day during summertime is kind of happening, because Amazon wants to boost sales when people don't feel like shopping. And so that's why we have Prime Day. It's going to be a test and learn. Like the way we're having these conversations with clients is, yes, we're looking at past data. We want to be as prepared as possible. But ideally, we just want to make sure that we have enough budget that's going to last the 4 days. We want to install a leeway budget, which is something that we do from time to time. But essentially, a leeway budget is just whatever your Prime Day budget is. We just want to have a little extra on the side so that if we see that great results are happening, or if we miscalculate that maybe 1 day's volume is going to be a little bit lower than it is, we have an injection of spend that we can incorporate in our campaigns to continue fueling those great sales that we will be seeing on platform. So these are some things that we can kind of prepare for without knowing exactly this day is going to be the highest selling and then that day is going to be a little bit weaker. Like, we don't have a crystal ball. So we won't be able to know that. But really, the most important thing is just how we are prepared for it. But we can make assumptions. And my assumption is that day one is going to be very, very important, very high sales day. I think day 4, the last day, towards the end of it, kind of the PST peak, like we call it internally here, that's going to obviously be a nice big peak in sales. And then day 2 and day 3, well, that's kind of what we have a bit up in the air. But my guess will be day 2 a little bit more important than day 3.
We'll be sure to, when we do the Prime Day recap episode and we have you back to talk about how things actually played out, we'll play back what you're saying here, what your hypothesis is of how the days will play out, and see how reality actually played out. We'll test it.
Yeah.
You could rebut yourself if you need.
Yeah.
Outside of the 4-day aspect of the event, over the past year, there have been a lot of changes in Amazon ads in general, a lot of developments with Amazon products that we're really going to get to see play into Prime Day now. When we're thinking about things like AMC audiences for sponsored ads, or it's all full funnel. We got to talk full funnel all the time, and the prevalence and sophistication of upper funnel media buying and measurement through ADSP. How should we be approaching these ad developments for Prime Day? And are there any that really stand out to you as like table stakes for making the most out of Prime Day?
Yeah, so I think that the big one has already been mentioned, which is AMC just in sponsored products in general. I think that this is, again, it's the first event that this is going to be widely available to pretty much every brand, I would say. And yeah, I even believe that maybe a few brands in Q4 last year had AMC sponsored product campaigns. Again, like I said, this is going to be really just table stakes for everyone. And when we're talking about a Prime Day event surrounded by this, let's say, uncertainty of the event itself being longer, budget's probably going to be stretched, profitability being up in the air, you really just want that precision. And that's what AMC in sponsored product ads is going to be able to give you and give brands. I can even make some examples that the team have already been hypothesizing around, which is, for example, in any type of campaign, we know how competitive the landscape can be during Prime Day. Having something that is going to just specifically speak to a cohort of people that you have nurtured or created and spoken to in multiple stages during a specific time and making sure that they're seeing that message, that's really going to increase, like I said, that precision of just speaking to the right people, not wasting money on people who probably don't want to buy this particular product or that might be out of your price range or whatever the case may be. That's what AMC and sponsored products is going to help with. So I think that's going to be the most important tool going into this event.
Like a quick clarifying question there, Damiano, because the precision has to be balanced with volume. The good thing about Prime Day is the extent of the volume that you have. And so I'm just curious, do you have some bucket of spend that you're allocating to these? It's a boost in bids, right? If I apply an AMC audience and you're going to say like this precise one, I'm willing to allocate some test budget to and really go after this customer set. But it's not like you're scrapping keyword targeting.
No, of course. As you mentioned, it's a boost in bid. But let's say, for example, in my AMC campaign, I want to use it for a branded campaign. So people searching for my branded terms. What I can do, and to help this kind of precision, is I can create a AMC audience specifically trying to target people who are going to be new to brand, to my brand itself, but that are going to search for my terms. I'm willing to pay more for these people searching for these branded terms. But then my usual customers, my loyal customers, I actually want to convert them on a cheaper basis.
Yes.
I don't want to pay so much money that I'm going to allow for this new to brand audience. And that's the precision that I was alluding to, right? I'm allowing myself to spend a little bit more for the people that I really want to get. And then the people that maybe are probably I'm going to reach anyway, I try and be a little bit more cost effective, let's say, with that separate cohort.
Right. It's a function of prioritization more so than it replacing budget that you maybe would have had otherwise.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, it leads to the next thought, which is a lot of planning has to go into this in the couple of months ahead of the actual event, right? Like you shouldn't be figuring out which AMC audiences you might want to test come Prime Day, right? So we talk about this on the organic and operations side of the business. Obviously, it applies to the media side of the business, which is the success of these events are often determined 2 months in advance, and hence us talking to you now. I'm curious, we talked a little bit about just the creative assets and the things that we need to get from the brand, but from an actual media deployment and lead in tactics, what does that look like for the next 2 months in terms of where you're pushing your spend to make sure you're well positioned come July?
Yeah, so it's definitely, we're going to start seeing a shift, or for our brands, we are going to start pushing budget more upper funnel. We're just going to try and have more demand generation and drive more consideration. Our idea, our hypothesis is to try and stand out of the barrage of red deal badges on Amazon and just really try and make sure that whoever is shopping kind of remembers us, or when they do go and buy the product that they were looking for, they remember, hey, that is that brand that I've been seeing quite often throughout my purchase journey. But yeah, essentially it's depending on the strategies available, if it's sponsored products only, or let's say AMS only, or DSP and AMS. The central idea is just pushing more money up a funnel, trying to leverage more of these one-party audiences or first-party audiences that Amazon provides. Yeah, and then just trying to foster this demand generation. And then I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but in the lead up, we also really want to make sure that any creatives that, aren't Prime Day specific, because Prime Day specific creatives you won't be able to launch prior to the event. But any creatives that are planning on launching during the event, try launch them now, get those through the moderation team, get those accepted, and start, if you can, if the means are available, start pushing it through some premium inventory like sponsored TV or DSP OLV, some of these more premium placements, just to familiarize those customers with your creative so that as soon as they see it, they're seeing something familiar, and it's going to incentivize them to click, find out more, and then literally make their way down the funnel, essentially. But yeah, there's also a lot of other things, expanding on audiences, trying to branch out a little bit more with keywords, just anything that's going to generate traction on your pages, on your products, I think is a good lead-in strategy that essentially we want to start now in May. Mid-May is okay. And then June, I would say you're late. Like June is kind of really last ditch. We really need to get going in our lead-in strategy in June.
A well-planned, a smart lead-in strategy is essential for winning on Prime Day, but it's not like the days itself, you're on autopilot and you just sit back and watch everything happen. It's all about the execution of those days and troubleshooting and dealing with the unexpected that we get every single year during Prime Day. In order to capture your demand and ensure that you're conquesting opportunities against competitors that maybe aren't as on top of things, what are some of the typical checks and tweaks that you and the team make during the event itself? And with that, because we can't talk enough about the fact that it's 4 days this year versus 2, does your process change at all with the additional days? Are you going to mirror the processes that you had for Black Friday, Cyber Monday events of the past? Just curious about how you approach the actual execution and checks and tweaks during the event.
Yeah, so I think that the most important thing is just the whole preparation before the event itself. Like, we really want to be so prepared that there aren't going to be any surprises during Prime Day. And so it makes our life managing campaigns just slightly easier. And that's why when you asked if there's going to be anything new in terms of checks and tweaks and things like that, actually managing the campaigns during the event, I would say no. I would say that our plan is going to be pretty much what we've done for so many years now on Prime Day. It's just going to remain largely unchanged. And that's just from an ads point of view, we really want to make sure that our badging is all correct, that whenever we're searching for our products, that we're seeing the correct badging displayed on Amazon. So historically, during Prime Day events, many brands might know that sponsored brand and sponsored brand video hasn't shown the red badge or the promotion, the deal badge. So just making sure that these things are up and running and we can troubleshoot that early doors. We want to make sure that we're hitting our peak selling time. So we know that during the event itself, shoppers aren't just buying completely 24/7. It's peaks and valleys. And so we want to make sure that we're pushing spend during the peaks and saving money, let's say, not spending too aggressively when shoppers are kind of relaxing a little bit. It's like there are quite clear peaks and valleys throughout the day. We want to make sure that our keyword placements are on point, that we're winning the placements that need to be won. We're making sure that our campaigns are leading to the correct pages. And the big one is just we want to make sure that we're spending enough and that we're not spending too much during the day. I didn't mention this before, but one thing that is also new this year, and this can be considered new, is we have a lot of automation. For example, in terms of budgets, which is always from an ads point of view, the most important aspect of Prime Day, we have available now, and also in the past, but I would say more refined now, just more automated options so that 2 days is okay with minimal sleep for ad managers. Now 4 days is a bit much. So relying a little bit on automation can also do well. Having a great tool behind you that essentially can analyze your campaign and say, hey, you've met this certain threshold, but you're out of budget, so we're going to inject X amount. That is all pre-planned, all predetermined, can certainly help manage these Prime Day campaigns and puts a little bit less pressure on us to, just kind of check and have absolutely everything down.
But we've gotten so used to the sort of Google Meet screenshot of a dead-eyed Damiano at like 2 a.m.
Yeah, of course.
Looking at bid adjustments, I'm going to miss that if PackFuse automation automates the circles under your eyes.
Yeah.
Last thing that I do want to make sure we touch on is the lead out, which I think a lot of times gets short shift. But to me, this seems as much expectation management as it is ad strategy management. I'm sure it's a combination of both. But just how are you taught when you speak to clients and all the important things that happen prior to the event, during the event? To what extent is it important that they keep the post-event in mind and that we sort of don't avoid the conversation there when it seems like there's still sales to be made after the event?
Yeah, so I think that the post-Prime Day event is essentially two separate things. We have two lead outs, like we have the close lead out, which is right after the event. And then we have the longer lead outs, let's say, which kind of goes towards the end of the month. So the close lead out is like the 3 or 4 days right after the event where we typically see quite a significant drop in terms of demand. It makes sense, right? After 2 days, now 4 days of people shopping, seeing deals all the time, obviously people are going to be less inclined to buy when they don't see the Prime Day deal badges anymore. So during that time, we're always advising clients or brands just to reduce their spend, kind of keep the lights on, no one's home, kind of have the basics. Make sure that you're not getting conquested, but we have some form of ad spend going through the campaigns. Yeah, and then I would say 3 to 4 days after, on a typical Prime Day, we start to see demand kind of come back up. And there it's going back into your regular swing of spend and tactics and all the such. One small caveat in terms of strategy might be a more refined focus on retargeting people from the event, cart abandoners, or people who viewed your products but did not purchase. Some small retargeting around that. But apart from that, I would say after a week of Prime Day, I would say you're pretty much back to your regular strategy with, like I said, that small tweak around retargeting, but everything else is about the same.
Makes sense.
I do have one more question. This hopefully won't be a completely evergreen episode that we could replay year after year, because there is a word of the moment that we haven't talked about yet that could have and likely will have impact on how brands are approaching Prime Day this year, and that's tariffs. So I'm curious about what you're hearing from brands that you're working with and how you're advising them to consider their investment and their strategy to accommodate what may or may not be the case with supply chain disruptions or price changes during the continued uncertain period that we're all in because of the tariff conversation. How is this playing out for you and your brands?
Yeah, so I think that the first thing is just to mention that during this time, our most important thing is for our brands, we want to be great partners to our clients. We want to let them know that we're in this with them, whatever disruptions that they are facing, we are essentially facing with them, and we want to kind of improve upon the situation in the best way possible, all kind of together. It's not them and then we are separated from them. Of course, it really depends on the problem at hand. And I think that each problem is going to be extremely unique to the brand itself. Because again, for example, supply chain issues, if there's no product, you can't really sell anything, right? Or if pricing strategy changes, there's a big question that you have to ask, which is, are you competitive in price or are you completely priced out of the market? And all of these kind of nuanced questions and answers is really going to then determine what strategy you're trying to develop for the brand itself. So it's very difficult to kind of paint with one brush, one solution. So I would just say, understand the problem at hand and be aggressive where you can be aggressive and be conservative where you can be conservative. With my own clients, I can say that I've seen the whole spectrum. I've seen clients that want to be extremely lean and protect every margin because they're expecting price increases. They don't want to pass it too much to the consumer, etc. They want to remain competitive with price. We have other brands that are completely untouched and they're fine. They don't mind what's kind of happening. And then we have the complete opposite end of the spectrum where we have brands that say, listen, as long as I'm competitive in price, I'm actually going to push harder right now because while others are fearful, I want to be bold. And this is where I'm going to be gaining more market share. Yeah, we have a category leader on Amazon that was the first thing that they said to us during tariffs. It was really eye-opening to see how these mega brands deal with these kinds of situations. When others are really worried, they're like, no, I'm actually throwing in more money to solidify my position. Again, like I said, we have the full rainbow here. So it's really just important to take it case by case and nuance by nuance and then just devise the best plan possible. But the most important thing is that we prepare. The episode's going out nice and early, so there's no excuse for those listening. I think that's how we're going to tackle this large uncertainty in the market right now.
And just as, there's no one brush, like you said, as an approach across brands, there's no one brush even within a catalog for a single brand. Like you have to plan, dig in, understand the whole picture, and then devise your strategy from there. So always working on the preparation so we can be agile. I appreciate your time, Damiano. And I know we've got a couple months until Prime Day, but you're already busy preparing your brand. So thank you for taking the time to come on and talk with us about it today. And looking forward to our recap conversation after the big almost week in July and hearing how your predictions potentially played out as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.